All right, my last one. This one comes from relationship advice. My 40 female husband, 40 male, has been going to therapy to work on his temper, and his therapist reported him to CPS. He's saying he'll no longer go to therapy because of this. How do I keep him engaged in the therapy needed to do the work? So me, 40 female, and my husband have been together for about 10 years, married for 5 of them. We have one child, 3-year-old male. My husband has always had a short fuse, is argumentative, and had challenges managing his anger. It's taken me a long time to convince him to go to therapy. He agreed about a year ago to go. It became clear recently he wasn't being open and honest with his therapist, and I have continually pushed him to be open so he can address his issues. For reference, he's never hit or hurt me or my son. I'd call him more of a yeller and the type that tries to avoid conflict by being loud. This isn't a good dynamic for the home, so I've been on him about talking to someone to help with managing this. In rare instances, he has thrown something, never at me or our son. One of these instances was recent, and I told him to be honest with his therapist to help him understand why this is his reaction and to work with him on healthier responses. He had this session this week and asked to increase his sessions. I was relieved that he was honest and knew enough to seek more than the monthly sessions he had. However, today, CPS left a card on my door and wants to talk to me regarding concerning behavior with Dad. Clearly, I know who made the report, and so does my husband. I've arranged to meet with them already, but the problem I'm also facing is that my husband, who has been so distrustful of the system and very impacted by the stigma of it, now distrusts it even more. I'm also a bit angry because this specific incident wasn't even anything that would be reported. He threw my son's Play-Doh in the yard after my son played with it on the deck and was refusing to clean it up. I'm also a PhD clinician, so I'm very familiar with the system and very protective of mine and my son's safety and well-being. While my husband's temper is a current challenge, he has been committing to taking steps to work on it. I love him very much and I love our family. As long as he's committing to working on it and changing, I've agreed to be here for support. I've made it clear to him that I will leave if things don't change because his temper and unpredictability are not healthy for our home. However, he's told me he's going to stop going to therapy because this is what happens when he's being honest in sessions. Any advice on how to keep him engaged? I'm feeling a whole host of emotions, mostly sadness, that someone seeking help gets reported for an anger outburst, reinforcing his distrust in the system and convincing him to not be honest in his self-work. Also, that the therapist, who has told him many times how they are mandated reporters, did not feel the need to tell him he disclosed something they felt obligated to report. I know not required, but I've always operated on the ethical principle with those I've treated. I feel like without his commitment to getting help working on this, our marriage will fail.
Wow. Bit him in the butt, eh? Doesn't even want to go to therapy. Goes to therapy, tells some truths. Guess CPS called on him.
Yeah.
I don't know, though, because, like, there's a reason CPS got called on him then. Like, unless his therapist was being malicious, it was probably within reason to call CPS.
Okay, so that is what the top comment says. Mandated reporter here. A CPS report would not be accepted by DSS for someone throwing Play-Doh in the yard. Something else is happening here. He must have admitted something very detrimental to have a report against him.
Also, why are we assuming it's a therapist? Like, it could have been a neighbor, could have been anybody. Unless the CPS was like, we got a report from your therapist. Why are they automatically blaming the therapist? And it could have been like a neighbor who saw them throw the Play-Doh.
So that is the next comment replying that says, I don't understand why we were just assuming it was the therapist. It could have been anyone. A neighbor seems more likely to me if he's constantly yelling. It's not really useful to assume we know.
I was going to say, like, if he's constantly yelling at home, I would think it would be a neighbor. I wouldn't automatically jump to my therapist.
Yeah.
I would think that the therapist has client confidential information unless you... Isn't it? I mean, I only know from...
I think it's
only know
unless
from
you're
movies
harmful.
and TV shows.
I know, yeah.
But what we've seen is, like, it's only in case you admit or talk about doing harm to someone.
Yeah.
Then CPS has to report it. Unless he talked about, I just want to strangle my son so he shuts up, I don't think they're going to get reported to CPS.
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
But yeah, I only know that from movies or TV shows, not from anything else. So.
Yeah, this is tough. I feel like OP doesn't really have all the information here. I think she's assuming it's the therapist because her husband is assuming it's the therapist because of maybe what he opened up with.
Right.
I think he probably only went as far to say as the Play-Doh thing, which is what he also told his wife.
Yeah.
But maybe something else happened that, like, when she
Maybe-
wasn't home.
Maybe he admitted to something else.
Yeah. Another comment quotes OP. I'm also a PhD clinician. So you are aware that a therapist would not call CPS over some yelling.
But a neighbor would.
Yeah.
A neighbor would call CPS, and then CPS would want to do a check. Therapist wouldn't. If the therapist did it, he admitted to something serious. But if it's just a CPS check, then I feel like it's totally a neighbor.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. People with anger issues like that scare me. Like, if your
especially when kids are involved.
anger is unreasonable and, like, you start throwing things, it scares me.
Yeah.